Jayden Daniels. He is, I mean, one of the most spectacular seasons that we've seen. Just an incredible talent, a dual threat. He's the true dual threat in this group. I love the touch. Sometimes he when I saw him throw, he kind of reminded me a little bit of Jalen Hurts in 2022, where it just seemed like the ball was on a string to AJ Brown and Devonta Smith. And I mean, obviously it helped that he had, Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. Just ready to, I mean, on the other side of those passes. So you get 2 future first round picks thrown it to you, but a great talent. I thought he ran a little bit recklessly. I thought he ran into contact that I didn't love to see, and I'm like, I want to play back what Trevor Lawrence told Anthony Richardson after the first game, that the hits add up at this level, and that and to get down and protect yourself. But Jayden Daniels, and I've got an important question after yours, but Jayden Daniels, how do you see him at the next level? What are the things you love and maybe are worried about?
Yeah, just from like a quarterback. So notwithstanding like where he's going to go, because I do have question marks after, we know where the Bears landing spot is. Jayden is one of those guys. He needs to go to an air raid, aggressive shotgun kind of system. Like I don't know how comfortable I would be with Jayden Daniels in like, a West Coast style, because when you're looking at Jayden Daniels' strengths, deep ball accuracy and placement, getting the ball out quick, right? Has acceleration, rushing upside. Yes. He is, the thing that stands out about him, I think, and this has happened throughout his whole career, except for his last year with Arizona State, which was a dumpster fire with Herm Edwards. So you really can't use that season in 2021. And if you're on the West Coast, you know all about the Herm Edwards tenure at Arizona State. It was bad. So I don't really necessarily use that. He's always taking care of the football. Like when you're looking at outside of that year, I mean, he only, has 9 interceptions in the 4 years. Outside of that 1 year, he had 10. So like when you're looking at like what he's able to do, I think if he processes well, I think that he can he gets the ball out quick, does those things. The reason why I want him in like that kind of a system is I think this is where he struggles is, his eyes tend to drop when there's pressure and he looks to run. So one thing that he's always kind of done this since even at Arizona State, he's a very he's not a run first guy. I don't want to put that narrative out there, but he is definitely like, oh, I have legs, I can go use them and get away from whatever pressure's coming at me. And we both know in the NFL, those holes close quick. And that where you see that. So I think that for him is going to be an adjustment. He's going to have to learn that. He's a very smart kid, though, when you're thinking of what he's able to do. And his development was great. I mean, look what he turned into after these 2 years at LSU. Mm-hmm. So you have to really like that. So I do think that mechanics are really good. He improved so much from his freshman year to now. Very compact, quick release, pretty good arm strength, gets it out quick. But my biggest concern about Jayden is where he lands. What is that scheme going to look like? And I think that's where like New England terrifies me for Jayden Daniels.
I totally agree. Because we don't know that offensive environment. And you mentioned air raid. Do we know an offensive coordinator who's run the air raid, possibly in a little north of Virginia there?
Yeah,
in Cliff Kingsbury. Could that be a happy marriage there in Washington?
I think that's the best fit for him, because. Now I hate Kingsbury's offense. So this is like one of those things where like I've watched Kingsbury, and I've been diving into Kingsbury too. Athletic did a great piece on Kingsbury in terms of his offensive philosophy, but from all accounts, from all the writers, the Ringer podcast talked about this too when he got fired from Arizona. The last couple of years in Arizona, it was like a college scheme, and NFL defenses had figured it out. And so my biggest concern is like, did he adapt? Is he adept enough to be like, you know what? I need to adapt this offense. I need to fix a little bit. Or is he just going to run that same offense out there? Right. That I think is the concern from a fantasy perspective. Yeah. Throw Jayden in there. Cause I think that weapons, I like the weapons there with Scary Terry, Jahan, those kind of weapons there. I think they've done good, with Eckler and Brian Robinson kind of, targets in that range. So that's probably the spot I like the most for him because I think it fits him well. My point to New England and why I worry about that spot is Alex Van Pelt's their offensive coordinator. Alex Van Pelt was not a good offensive coordinator. You know, when you look at what he did with Cleveland as well, when he was kind of developing there with, and I know Stefanski kind of runs the deal there, but just did not look good. And he doesn't really have a track record of like, well, really want him to build that quarterback. And I hate that they've got Mayo too. I'm not a big Mayo guy because I don't like the tree of Belichick with these guys, like, because they have that arrogance. You're already hearing it a little bit with Mayo. Like, you know, he's kind of being brushed with the media, those type of things. Like, and the weapons are nasty out there in New England. I don't want anything to do. So, like, that to me, like, you know, I don't think Jayden can overcome that. Like, I think Jayden, that would be a struggle for Jayden. And they've had struggle building and getting like weapons out there. And if they can't get weapons for Jayden, he just had Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. That is a stark difference to Demario Douglas, who I like, but, you know, it's Demario Douglas and Juju and those guys that are out there. Like, it's just not, to me, Kendrick Bourne. Like, those guys are, I think Kendrick Bourne's still there. I don't remember if he
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. So, like, that to me is just Jayden. I don't know how much he can elevate those guys. You know what I mean? So that is, I think, my biggest concern there. Whereas the Commanders, he doesn't even have to really elevate those guys. They can probably put him in good spots, and he just can flourish there.
Yeah, that one. Oh God, that New England offense. It almost feels like I'd rather see that. I mean, please, Matt Harmon, don't cry, because I'd almost like to see them build out the wide receiver and have Marvin Harrison, because that's actually Matt's worst nightmare, is to have Marvin Harrison end up in New England. So because he wants to make sure he ends up with a good quarterback. But yeah, when it comes to Jayden Daniels, God, I do want to see that. But I got an interesting question. So so much of Dynasty has been talking about like the 102 and rookie drafts, where it's almost automatic to go Marvin Harrison Jr. Is there a scenario where Jayden Daniels could climb into that 102 with that rushing upside?
Sure. I think so. I think, you know, the reason why that scenario could be possible is if you really need a quarterback. Like, if you're sitting there and like you desperately need a quarterback and you're at the 102 and you look at next year's class, which is kind of down, the 25 class, not a lot of surefire guys. I mean, some people could definitely play better. Carson Beck, Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart. Some of those guys might pop off and you're like, oh, wow, like, hey, these guys are kind of up there. There's no clear-cut QB in the 25 class. So if you're sitting there at the 102 and you desperately need a quarterback, that might be like, hey, I like Jayden. I like that. I think you have some options to maybe move back a little bit if you wanted to. But that would probably be the only scenario. I'd have a hard time passing up Marvin Harrison Jr. even at the 102, to be honest with you. I would probably do whatever I could to maybe try to get back into that tier if I had some extra capital. I'd be working hard right now to get some extra capital to see if I can move up in that 105, 106 tier, maybe to take JJ or something like that to pair with Marvin Harrison Jr. But that would be the only scenario where if you really desperately need a quarterback, you know, like, hey, I like Jayden or Drake or whoever's in that range.